Okay, welcome back to another episode of A Dose of Reality. It's good to be back. I'm hosting again. I'm looking off to the side because Nefrutat's off in the background once more. I'm in the host seat and I'm doing it well. I'm doing it. I'm the best. Yeah.
The best was strong, but yeah.
It's good to be back. It's good to be here. We've got Rekhtu back in the seat.
Raoul back. Greetings. Good to be back. Back in the studio. Back in the podcast.
It's good to have you back.
Yeah,
I guess.
Appreciate it.
Yeah. Today's a good episode. Well, I'm excited for today's episode because we're going into the planes of existence, right? The different vibrations of existence, the different realms of existence. Planes and realms often interchanged with the word dimensions. But as we speak about it in our culture, the planes of existence is something different to the dimensions of existence. So hopefully another time we can go into the dimensions, as taught in the scroll, the dimensional shift. However, today we're going to go into the planes of existence, okay? The afterlife, if you like. What goes on beyond this physical realm. Anyone who's on their spiritual journey or engages in what you might term spirituality essentially acknowledges that there are worlds beyond this one, right? Worlds beyond the physical. What are those worlds? How do they work? What information or information do we have about them is what we're going to go into today. There are different planes is what we're saying, right?
Essentially.
There are different realms. How would you describe first, let's talk about what are the different planes of existence. Obviously, we have the physical world, might be called the material world also. What are the other planes of existence?
So, what Bubba's taught us over the years, there are 7 realms. Well, there's actually 9 realms of existence. 7 realms we speak of and 2 we dare not speak of, which means we know nothing about those 2 at all. But Bubba's yet to reveal that information to us. But this all correlates when you talk about the 7 chakras, which Bubba said actually in the pure Negroid being, there's 9 chakras. And when you talk about 9 ether, this all correlates. And, being that the chakras allow us to communicate with these different planes or move between these different planes of existence. But essentially, when we're speaking of the planes, we're speaking of the material or physical plane, which we reside on right now. The plane of life, the masters refer to it as the abode of life. Some schools is referred to it as the plane of forces. We're speaking about the spiritual plane. We're speaking about the mental plane. And then 3 more planes, which Bubba's spoken a bit less of in this school, but referred to a lot in the old schools, where he spoke about the plane of divine truth, the plane of divine reality, and the bosom of the Most High, if you like. So those are the 7 planes of existence. What Bubba's broken down, and what is an actual scientific fact, is that everything that exists is vibration. Everything resonates, has a frequency. What we perceive as different forms are just different variations in frequencies. So for instance, a solid vibrates slower than a liquid and has more compact particles. That's an actual scientific fact. A liquid vibrates slower than a gas. And again, its particles are more compact. Yet you can still have the same phenomena in those different forms, i.e. ice, water, and steam. Same chemical composition, different states of existence. More so to the point, different forms of existence, much like solid, liquid, and gas, or much like light and sound, can exist in the same space at the same time, which is what the master is likening the planes to, and trying to get us to understand that these planes of existence aren't different realms stacked upon another. In fact, they exist within the same space and the same time, just at different vibrational frequencies, if that makes sense. So, everything resonates, everything is vibration, everything is light or sound as perceived in different ways. So there are a lot of sciences that prove that sound is light and vice versa. So for instance, scientists, NASA have recorded sounds made in space. Now we know, according to science, space is a vacuum, so sound can't travel through space, right? Light can. But sound cannot travel through space. Yet if you YouTube the sound of the planets, the sound of space, what scientists have done is effectively translated those vibrations that are made in space into resonant sound, if that makes sense. So again, these things we call light and sound are just based upon perception on our senses, really. You know, light is what we see, sound is what we hear, but they're still just frequencies and phenomena, if that makes sense. And that's why I always go back to that analogy. If a tree falls down to the ground and makes a thud, but no one is there to hear it, does it make a sound?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Does it make a sound? Does it make a sound, Nefrutat?
Does it make a sound?
She says no. She says no, but very deep.
Very deep.
Very deep. Because it's just understanding that this world is perception. Really.
Exactly.
The reality that you know is really based on your perception and your perspective.
Exactly.
So everything you see is just what you see, really, which is proven by the fact that you have beings that are able to perceive different lights. Or, you know, for example, we see the sky as blue, but birds see it as...
Some species of birds see it as violet.
As violet, right? Which is based on your perception.
Exactly.
Even blue being there, because we spoke about, you've spoken about the science of blue eyes and how eyes aren't really blue. They're more transparent, but blue travels the fastest, so you perceive blue. Yeah. So it's the way we perceive the world.
Exactly. It's all based upon perception, and it's all an illusion. You know, there's so many different things we've broken down over the years. We've looked at the analogy of, well, if I look at a red chair or a blue chair, is it really red or is it really blue? So let's take the red chair, for instance. If I look at a red chair, is it really red? It's debatable, because the only reason you see the red on the chair is because what they call white light, which is every frequency of visible light on the electromagnetic spectrum, is hitting that object, and then the only color that's deflected back is the red. So it absorbs every other color on the spectrum except for the red. So you could argue that a red chair is in fact not red. It's every other color but red.
It's every color but red.
And it's, again, it was the same. You're breaking down with the blue sky, blue eyes. It's just based upon, if anyone's tried that scientific experiment, shining light for a prism, and you see the blue the most because it has a higher frequency, and our eyes are quite sensitive to blue as well. So, you know, everything we see around us is based on illusion. Even what we see is a projection of our own mind's eye, as Baba has a part of that called the mind's eye, isn't it? What we see literally is light. Is a response to light hitting the retinas in our eye, and then that information traveling up our optic nerve to our brain, and then our brain processing that information and projecting it back out. But actually, if you study the way the eye works, the light gets refracted such that the image enters your eye upside down. So what happens is when your brain processes it, it flips it the right way round and projects it back out. So it's based upon our mind's eye anyway. It's based upon what our mind is interpreting. So it's just so deep. It goes to show you that really your tools for perception are literally just that, tools for perception. Exactly.
But really you see in your mind.
Exactly.
Which is why we always ask the question in class: when you close your eyes or when you have a dream, are you seeing things? Because your eyes are closed, but you're seeing things, right?
Yeah.
So it goes to say that the sight, what you call in sight, is really just the receiving of light. Your perception is controlled within the mind, which is why we recently dropped a little reel on the mind's eye. They were trying to come at us, but we had the science.
The science is sound. If you have the science, there's no arguing with it. It's sound. It's sound.
Yeah.
Some will still try.
Yeah, of course they will. Of course they will. We live in a world where we understand that you can breaking down sciences and you can produce facts, but you're still going to get backlash. You're still going to get arguments as part of the process of freeing our minds, right? So, but it's deep. It's deep to me. It's very deep to me as well. And when you speak about solid liquids and gases, I always think that's a great place to go with it, because you, like you said, you're speaking about particles vibrating slower or being more compact than the next set. And then which are vibrating slower and being more compact than the next set, but it's the same chemical, right? And so you could keep going with that.
Most definitely.
But eventually, where are you? Once you get past gas, and you keep going past gas, you go past, where are you?
Yeah, and you know, we've seen it in our lifetime. We you know, certainly I probably you as well, were taught growing up that the three states of existence were solid, liquid, and gas.
Right.
Later on, they found there was another state of existence called plasma. And there's different forms of existence. The matter in a chicken's eyes, for instance, is what they call disordered hyperuniformity. Google it, look it up. It's a different state of matter.
Right.
So there are states of matters that scientists are uncovering, but it's very correct. Once you're vibrating higher than a gas frequency or plasma frequency, you most certainly are entering another realm. That's a fact. Much like the electromagnetic spectrum, once you get past red, you go to infrared, or once you get past violet, you go to ultraviolet. Out of the range of our perception, but we know these frequencies exist.
Exactly.
So yeah, it's deep. It's
deep. And again, it goes to show you what you know so far isn't what it is, because like you say, we grew up in 3 states of existence. Some people would have been thinking the atom was the smallest you could go, and they've gone beneath the atom, they've gone beneath that, and they've gone beneath that, and you could keep going. So it goes to show you the world operates on what we know, and we think what we know at that time, this is it. It's an understanding that there is more to this.
Funny fact, actually, the word atom is an outdated word.
Yeah, of course it is. Shouldn't be called atom.
Atom comes from the Greek atomos, which means indivisible, but they divided that atom.
Divided the hell out of it.
And there's particles everywhere. It's time to update that word.
They got to change the name. They got to change the name. But it's deep. It's very deep. It's very deep. So in dealing with that, I guess walk through, you mentioned 7 planes of existence. I guess let's start with 4, because 4 is what you mentioned Baba mainly speaks about. So we have the physical material world, the one that we reside on. The next one you said was the plane of forces, or the abode of life. How would you describe that realm based on, or that plane of existence based on what you've read?
Describing the abode of life, it's kind of imperative to understand the physical or the material plane, because it actually, the way the master describes it is almost like an etherical duplicate, almost like the binary code to a computer, if you like. So
Rekhtu works in computing, so he's always working in his computing references, like the binary code. Go ahead.
No, but it's amazing how much computer references you can pull into wu-sabat.
It is amazing, isn't it?
It's crazy. We got some more coming soon. But
He does.
but when we look at the material plane, we understand that it's this physical realm. It's the governor of cardinal desire. And what's important is that sometimes when we talk about cardinal desire, a sort of negative connotation can be put upon that, but at the end of the day, we exist on this physical realm for a reason. So we're taught in our doctrine to do things in balance, spiritually and physically, because at the end of the day, we do exist physically, so we are here to enjoy the cardinal desires. It just must be done in balance, if that makes sense.
I've also found, just on that point, not to interrupt, but as well, it's an important point to make, because spirituality sometimes I've seen used it as an excuse for laziness. So we when we want to get things done, definitely there's some spiritual aspects to our activity, but there should also be physical aspects.
Most definitely.
And some people want to sit around praying all day, and it's like, well, that's how different is that to religion, if that makes sense?
So, it's not going to happen. If you want something to happen,
you got to act on it.
Yeah, you got to get up and work for it.
And it's not to say that spiritual aspect doesn't exist. It's not to say you shouldn't call on your ancestors, call your relatives that have crossed over for help, so on and so forth, call on Panataru. But it's also, well, they're going to come and be like, well, what are you doing about it? You just sit, I'm supposed to do the work?
Well, you can relate to that physically. No one wants to help a bum, do they? If it's someone just bumming around asking for your help, you're going to be like,
get away from me. Get away from me.
But if someone's genuinely trying to achieve something, and they say, can I get your help? You're going to be inspired. You're going to want to help them.
You're more inclined to help them out. No doubt about that.
So we understand, this physical realm deals with cardinal desires, deals with what we interact with our 5 senses, which is 1 sense. So when we talk about touch, see, taste, hear, and smell, our 5 senses, Baba broke it down a long time ago. That's just 1 sense, which is touch, because every one of those senses involves some form of contact, whether it's sound waves on your eardrum, whether it's light hitting your retina, whether it's those smell particles that are hitting your nose. There's some form of contact in which the brain processes that form of contact and interprets it as such: smell, taste, touch, etc. So that's what we talk about when we're speaking of this physical realm. Now, what Baba broke down about the abode of life, or the plane of forces, is that everything you see happens so continuously, so without fail, so faithfully, if you like, the continuous cycle of the seasons, the continuous rotation of the planet, form and shape, the instinct of the animals is all guided and essentially coded by the abode of life. So it is in essence an etherical duplicate of this physical realm where certain things must happen, and it's all governed by the abode of life. So that's where the master broke it down. It's a lot of Patriarchs where we have the concept of duality. So a lot of our Patriarchs, we see, Aset or Ashtat facing in a mirror, sort of mirrored opposite direction to her sister Nababtat Hatat or Nephthys, and that's representative of the duality of life. And such as it is, even with the physical realm, it has its dual counterpart, so to speak. So that was what Bubba was breaking down in terms of the abode of life. So
right,
yeah,
it's
wow.
deep.
Wow,
it's deep. It's deep. Gets you, and I guess we start going into. We spoke before about H1 being on this side, E1 being on the other. We have things such as antiparticles, antimatter. There's a whole
it's just
science to dive into within that. But the concept of duality is obviously a very important one. And to speak about that from that perspective is interesting, because we speak about it a lot when we're dealing with the physical. We know that we live in a dual world. So you're always going to have opposites, and that you really can't define without the other. What is hot, what is cold. Again, perception controls that. Whatever is hot to me might be something different to a different being or different species that perceives the world differently.
Exactly.
I go out and it's freezing cold to me sometimes, and there's other people out in t-shirts strolling around like it's the good times. It's not. It's not the good times. Until we get out this country, it's not the good times. I'm going on a run, but the sun ain't it. It's too cold.
For white people.
Yeah, it's great. I can't do this. But that concept is important, because we speak about a lot of duality in the physical realm. Hot, cold, tall, short, good, evil, so on and so forth. But it's important to know that even the physical realm itself has its opposite in that sense, which will be, as you say, the plane of forces, the abode of life, the etherical realm. There's different terms used, but yeah. So we've got physical, we've got plane of forces. You mentioned spiritual realm next.
Yeah, spiritual realm. Wow. Yeah, I mean, the master, he's written a Patriarch called Soul, Spirit, where he he explains and breaks down the different essences, the different parts to our being, one of which being spirit, not to be confused with the soul, because the master's made that very clear. It is very, the spirit and soul are two different entities that reside within your being, and some beings don't have soul. Some human beings don't have soul.
We spoke on this recently, didn't we? We just dropped a little reel on that. Yeah, it's an important note. It's an important note. I suppose the question would be, where did this confusion start? Is it religion that started to combine the idea of a spirit and a soul? Was it mistranslations? Because I know there's certain words in religious texts that they might translate as spirit.
Yeah, most definitely. It's very difficult to pinpoint where to start, but there would have definitely been a lot of confusion within religion as far as the spirit and soul, because they get the terms get used one instead of the other when we talk about interchangeably. That's the word I'm looking for. And when we're talking about the essence of our being beyond the physical, some people say spirit and some people say soul. Ironically, what the master broke down is when you read that chapter of Genesis, and it said God blew breath into Adam and he became a living soul. He said, ironically, that does tie in to what the soul really is, because when you're talking about that soul, you're talking about that, that breath of life, that wind, that creative expressional being, as the master broke down. Whereas when you're talking about spirit, you're talking about personality, character. Now, I bid anyone to look at any being on the planet. Every single being has personality. Look at cats, look at dogs.
That's exactly what we said.
Yeah, look at birds. They all behave differently, but they don't have soul. And what I mean by that is that if you put a mouse in front of a cat, it's going to react every way the same time. It's going to put that mouse out its misery.
He said every way the same time. Every time.
The same way.
Because his brain is going at 100 miles per hour. So sometimes the words just fly out. They just fly out.
These new age cats.
Yeah.
Some of them
scared.
are wusses. Listen, we got some cats. Obviously, we're very rodent conscious in our house, and we live near an alleyway, so we got to keep these rodents away. We're getting these cats, and cats are just sitting around all day. I don't know what this new age of cat is. That's not about their business, not about their work.
We got one good one there.
Yeah, one puts in the work, gets the kill, but the other two, they just want a lavish life. Give me my food, let me lounge around all day, big belly and all of that. Garfield. That's what Mullad calls them, Garfield cats.
No, but it's interesting because, you know, the master told us long ago, actually, nature is an ancient entity of and in itself that evolves and grows. So, and the animals are reflective of that. So he said, when you start to see the animals behaving differently, it shows you that nature is changing. Right. I remember when you couldn't go within a 10-mile radius of a bird before it flying away. Now these birds are cheeky.
Yeah, they're walking alongside you. Yeah. They're telling you to move out the way.
Yeah, it's mad. Wild. It's mad. I was driving the car the other day and I had to slow down for a bird. Yeah. I'm just like, what's going on? You better stop.
I saw a pigeon. Yeah, I dare you. I saw a pigeon crossing at the zebra crossing the other day. Walked out, like, follow the rules. What's going on? So it's different.
But the point we're getting at is that animalistic behavior or beast-like behavior is based upon instinct, whereas some beings have the power to reason. And what the master was saying is reasoning, selflessness aligns more with the soul. Creative expression aligns more with the soul. And when you look at us as a people, when you look at us quite bluntly as a Negroid people and as a black people, nobody is more creative and expressional than us. Just look at the music industry, the sports industry, you know, no one has that creative expression.
And even beyond that, the business industry as well, because when we were going into this the other day, when you look at a lot of the inventions that really define our modern world and you trace them back to their original creation, you will find someone of African descent behind the idea, behind the initial invention, behind the initial creation. You might not know it. You might be surprised. This is why we did that article where we was going through a lot of the black inventors of our time, that despite the fact that we may have been going through some unfair times, should we call it that, we were still in our creative element, still creating, still inventing, still driving the world forward and driving the species, if you like, or the different species we see on the planet forward, and making our lives better and more comfortable. Whether you're dealing with technology or whether you're dealing with other aspects of just your daily life.
Most definitely.
So definitely, I would advise everyone to look into some of the black inventors. We have that movie as well. What's it, with Janelle Monáe and Hidden Figures. To look at some of the things we were behind as a people that might surprise you when you actually look into it, because you would think that, wow, this is just a white man's world in terms of the creation of it, but it's very, very far from that.
Even a black guy wrote the algorithm used by Uber.
Yes,
and stuff like that.
Exactly. So Uber, one of the most prominent, what she just said is a black person was behind the algorithm that really controls these ride-sharing apps like Uber and so on and so forth. So you'll be surprised when you look into it to find out just how much we contribute in terms of that creativity, whether it's that expression through music and so on and so forth, or that expression through actually getting down and creating something with your mind or with your hands. We're behind so much of it. So it's important to, like you say, to recognize. What I would touch on, just based on what you're saying as well, because I was going to go into this a little bit later, but since you've mentioned it, important probably at this point to draw a distinction between the two types of soul and the two types of spirit, because you mentioned the breath of life. You also mentioned the creative expressional being. So we have two. When you read the book Soul, Spirit, it's called Soul, Spirit, because Baba teaches us we have two types of soul and two types of spirit. Okay, you have the Rawah, which is the breath of life, you know, that wind within us, you know, you can relate it to the solar plexus, that heat within us, that's innate. Baba also broke down, we have the Bah, which is the creative expressional being. So those are your two souls. And then the spirit, you're talking about the Nafas, which is the personality, which every living being, including plants and trees, even though Baba said they have a different type of spirit, but nonetheless they have spirit, possesses that. So you have the Nafas, which is the personality, the I, the ego,
the self-awareness,
the individual,
the individuality, exactly. And then you have so what was it we said, the nafas, and you have the ka'ah. That's correct, which is the exoplasmic being, as Baba explains it, comes into being the moment the sperm and ovum make contact, essentially. So it's very deep. It's very deep. Yeah, and furthermore, there's Patriarch where Baba explained that these different pieces of our soul and spirit come from different beings in our family, so come from our mother or father or ancestors, etc.
Because we were talking about this with our fellow student teachers across the waters over in the States, and we spoke about the prism. We spoke about the book The Prism, and where it explains exactly what you're talking about. And when we speak about that ba'a, that creative expressional being, we're really talking about that being a divine, if you like, section or segment of your being, a divine entity of your being, that comes from really our ancestors. Okay, when you're talking about rawah, that breath, that really comes from your father. Okay, when you're talking about your nafas, that comes from your mother. Okay, and I'm not sure what it said about your ka'ah. Might have to.
I can't recall that one.
Go over it again, but exactly what you're saying. Different elements of your being that come from different places, if you like. And when you're talking about that divine entity that really, as the original world people, we have to the highest degree, you're talking about that ba, which is that creative expression of emotion, being that natural creativity, that natural emotion, that natural compassion, if you like, different degrees of it. And it's important to note that. But to go back as well to what you were saying. So we're talking about the spiritual plane.
Yes, so essentially the spiritual plane is where spirits manifest in a nutshell. So when we talk about, like we said, the personality, the I-ness, so that principle of I, ego, self doesn't exist in the planes beyond, at least not in the same format that, that self-importance, if you like, that self-awareness of it's me and that ego, which is not necessarily a good or bad thing. We always emphasize with the ego, it is a tool there to be used. It's just how you use it. So that's where that personality or spirituality manifests, if that makes sense, on that realm. And obviously that's where a lot of our ancestral beings reside, is on that realm, if that makes sense. So that's what, in essence, we're talking about, the manifestation of the spiritual self, in that plane.
So, and then moving on to the next, the last of the four, if you like, the mental plane.
The mental plane is interesting because the mental realm we acknowledge as the fourth plane of existence, but in some way it's the highest abode of existence, because we know everything is mental. The masters explain that the mental realm is the bridge between the first three planes and the last three planes, if that makes sense. So in essence, when we're making our journey through the afterlife, our ancestors, Parnafaru, whoever, would meet us in that plane, in essence, to take us to the higher realms. And we know that everything is mental. Everything, we always say from mental to mind, or we speak of the mental reservoir, where no thought, no concept, no idea is original in that sense. It just exists in an ocean, if you like, comparable to an ocean of thoughts. So thoughts don't actually originate from your brain. They originate from the mental reservoir or the mental realm, and they travel down to your mind, which you then express through my own or through your physical personality. So the brain is no more than just a physical instrument we utilize on this physical realm. And proof of that is that there are animals that exist that don't have brains, and that is an actual fact. There are animals that exist that don't have brains. So that goes to show you the brain is just an instrument, which in this case we just use to control our nervous system. That's all it is.
An actual fact. And as when you come to a spiritual understanding or overstanding, that should be one of the easier facts to acknowledge, because obviously you do not pass from this realm and suddenly lose the ability to function. Okay, so the brain is a physical tool.
It's a physical
tool. But that's what it is. It's a physical tool. That's not where the thought originates.
So everything that you see manifest before you, had to have been thought of first, and that's an actual fact. Even in the physical realm, before you do something, before you make something, you always have to think about it first on some level, conscious, subconscious, whatever.
Absolutely.
So
The nervous system.
Yeah.
Study the nervous system. If you want to, obviously, a physical understanding of the science in terms of what happens when you spark that thought and the neurons or the motor neurons traveling down to the relevant muscles in order to spark that action. Study that, but it always starts
in the mind. It always starts in the mind. So that's what we're speaking of when we speak of the mental plane. We're speaking about thought. Everything physical, spiritual, manifesting as from an idea of thought. So we're speaking of the mental reservoir. And what Bob was interesting and is what Bob has broken down about thoughts. Like some thoughts might not be yours. Spiritual beings, disagreeable, malevolent or benevolent might jump onto thoughts, alter them. So you think a thought is yours and in actuality it's not yours. Or you might express something in anger and you amplify it more than you intended to because a negative being sensed that negative energy traveling down from the thought realm and thought, let me jump on this and amplify it. So it's just
Say something way meaner than you meant.
Yeah, man. You're in an argument and you say something and you're like, oh my God, why did I say it like that? You know it's done. You know it's done. You're gonna have to. It's a good 2-3 days of cool down because you said it the way you said it. But that science is so deep. It's so deep. We've spoken about it before. There's a diagram in one of the Master Secret Scrolls.
I think it's the Master Secret 3.
The Master Secret 3. That hopefully we can just pop up on the screen round about now. Where you see that very science, or the diagram really illustrates the very science you're explaining, where you have that mental reservoir, that mind, and a thought at that point, before it's traveled to the physical, if you like, before it's expressed in the physical, it passes through the spiritual realm as well. So therefore, and this is where Baba said, be careful of your thoughts, be careful of your emotions, because these are vibrations, these are real things that attract real beings. The same as smell. If a certain smell goes out, you put blood in the water, the shark's going to come back. So if your thoughts and your emotions, they work in the same way. These are actual vibrations, they exist. You just can't see them the same way you can't see certain things that you can smell. It's the same thing. So it explains that when you have that thought, it's traveling down through past the spiritual before it gets to the physical and before you express it. So when it's passing through that spiritual realm, there might be a couple demons that are just like, oh, yeah, because I like that. I'm going to jump upon that. And he explained a lot of what you might call demons, ghosts, disembodied spirits, ghouls, so on and so forth. They're beings that are hanging around looking for a physical experience, even if it's just temporary. Okay, this is another reason not to go off too much, where he explained, don't become drunk or intoxicated, because at that point you lose control of your conscious mind, right? Your spirit becomes weaker, your blood gets thinner, your spirit becomes weaker, and these beings can jump in your body. So when you black out and wake up 8 hours later talking about, oh, that was a hell of a night, you don't know what could have taken place. Okay, so stay away from intoxication, stay away from drugs. Okay, in that period you become weaker, your conscious mind becomes weaker. You don't know what you will then do, which might not even be you doing it, so to speak. Okay, so yeah, on that note, that diagram is important, because your thought can travel down past the spiritual, and before it's expressed physically, somebody might, or some being might jump on it and amplify it. When it comes out way more mean, or it comes out way angrier, or way more volatile than perhaps you intended it when you had the thought, because in the emotion, the heat of the emotions of whatever discussion or argument you were having, you had that thought and then jumped on it. It's an important science. It's important science. The Master Secret Scroll, we have to get that. I would say read that, and also read Egyptian ontology or mythology, which goes into a little bit of that science of how things always come in threes anyway. So mental, spiritual, and physical are tied together and linked together, and we often bridge them without realizing it. And you have to be wary of what can happen in those realms. They're real places, just faster vibrations, if that makes sense.
Most
so
definitely.
Yeah. So we've dealt with those four. Those are the main four he's spoken about.
Indeed.
We've got
physical
and material world. Okay. We've got
your abode of life,
abode of life, or your plane of forces. We've got
the spiritual realm,
and
we've got the mental realm.
And the mental realm is really what we're saying is where it, for lack of a better term, all begins, so to speak. Because that term, as we said the other day, can be misleading. There is no beginning.
Exactly.
There is no end.
Existence is without beginning, without ending.
Beginning, without ending, which is what we see at the end of all of our actual facts, without beginning and without ending. And that concept sometimes blows people's minds because it
blows my mind. Blows my mind. But when I think about it logically, I'm like, well, this has to be true. This has to be true. But the mind, it's a place the mind can't go. For us to have always, ever existed, it's a place our mind can't go. Not in this state.
Yeah, because in this state we need that beginning.
Yeah.
And we need that end.
Yeah. And to be fair, the beginning and end does exist, just not in the way we thought about it growing up in religion or whatever, where we talk about in the beginning, God made the heavens and the earth, where, you know, completely overlooking the fact that God existed before the heavens and the earth. And therefore, if God existed before the heavens and the earth, it is not then the beginning, is it? So completely overlooking that fact.
Yeah. And no, go ahead.
But it's, you know, so what we've been taught is the beginning and ending is just the beginning and ending of a cycle, the ending of one cycle and the beginning of a new cycle. So every ending is a beginning, if that makes sense. And it's just continuous cycles of nature, of existence in that respect.
And it takes me to a couple of things. First of all, to the understanding that opposites are the same. Obviously, when we think of something like creation, we think of something beautiful, perhaps. When we think of something like destruction, we think of something not beautiful. But it's to understand that those are different sides of the same force. Creation, destruction that's just a cycle.
Indeed.
And when something is destroyed, something is then created.
And we see it all the time on this planet when we talk about the four seasons,
right?
You know, autumn, winter, spring and summer. We literally see the destruction of nature. We see, you know, the trees dying dead. We see all the insects, birds depart to another side of the planet, like, nah, this ain't the spot to be, you know. And then we see that resurrection in the summer, if we ever get to the summer in London.
Yeah, do we? Do we?
Sometimes.
Yeah. I don't know that we do, but exactly that. And so that's that cycle, and and nature follows that cyclical nature, if you like, whereas we can look at the planet and say the seasons, we can look at the planet and say going around the sun, we can look at the solar system, we can look at the galaxy, we can look at universe, all following cycles, which makes existence somewhat of a spiral more than it is a straight line going forward, which also changes your idea of time. Okay,
indeed.
And it's to understand that you can and will at some point step out of time and will be able to look in upon it as though you would look into a room. Interstellar.
Yeah.
Right, the movie Interstellar, where he's looking at time at the end and he's seeing all the different occurrences. So it's deep, but also so you understand creation and destruction as part of the same force. When we talk about the beginning, it takes me a little bit actually to the Matrix movie, where the Oracle said everything that has a beginning has an end. And so if you don't have a beginning, you don't have an end. But it's part of those opposites. But it's very true in nature. If something has a beginning, at some point it will have an end. It's the nature of existence, if that makes sense. The cycle of existence, and it keeps going and going and going and going. But us as African, or a better term, us as 9 etherical beings, we have no beginning. We have no end.
Indeed.
We will always exist.
Indeed.
In some form, in some shape or form. So it's a very interesting one. Last point I'll make as well is, when you deal with religious, just because we're talking about the term in the beginning, it will say in the beginning, the word, so on and so forth.
Yeah.
Would the more correct or more accurate term be in the beginning, the thought?
The thought, most definitely. But it's an interesting concept because when we speak of the New Testament saying in the beginning was the word, you know, and the
word was with God.
And the word was God, and the word was made flesh. You know, I'm slightly paraphrasing, but one of the schools we went through was understanding that frequencies manifest into physicality, into what we see as physical. So when we talk about everything on this physical realm, this physical universe, it was once a sound, a vibration that manifested physically, and still is a sound, a vibration manifesting physically, if that makes sense. So that's where that concept of in the beginning was the word came from. But it is way more, if we talk about the word being the conception, then we must talk about the thought being the inception in that respect. So in the beginning if we're saying there's a beginning, because again, it's a misleading term, was actually the thought. The thought was the inception, the start of the process, the initiator, if you like, which then became the word, which then became flesh in that respect. So it's, there's just so many levels to these things. It's just, it's very deep.
It's deep.
Very deep. Yeah.
It's deep. But the idea of frequency manifested into flesh is obviously deep, because we spoke also recently about the fact that frequencies or sound can be the bridge between the different realms. So if you can achieve a certain frequency here on the physical, you can make contact with that which is beyond the physical, which is where the idea of prayer comes from. There is a science to prayer. In our culture, obviously, we attempt and succeed to achieve certain frequencies when we're chanting together, or when we're praying together, for lack of a better term, because these are the frequencies that those who we're trying to reach can receive. It's all about frequencies, like a radio station. You have to tune into the right frequency, with language playing a huge role in that, because language is frequency.
Most definitely.
Different languages have different frequencies.
Most definitely. And the master is broken down. And it's a scientific fact. It's something you can go and research, that when you're doing prayer or chanting, there's a spiritual effect. So, it's been scientifically proven that when you chant in unison, your heartbeats align. In the same way, if you have a group of sisters or females living together, their periods will eventually align. It's that type of science. There's a spirituality to it. The master was explaining that when you chant in unison, and it's a scientific fact, they've proven it, your heartbeats start beating at the same rate, and you actually align on that level. So it's not just a case of a physical act. There's something deeper going on here, if that makes sense. So it's mind-blowing.
It's mind-blowing, and it's important, because it's one of the sciences that will help us unify. We always speak in our culture about, Baba Yanun speaks about love and unity, and he speaks about, okay, what would solve most of our problems that we have with this unity? And he speaks about the language. He speaks about, well, if you were all speaking our original language and all got onto that frequency, you would find it a lot easier to unify, which is why when they did what they did to us, they took away our language. I always say this: they took away our tones, they took away our culture, they took away our identity, because that identity plays a part in not only who you are physically, but who you are spiritually. And if you're not vibrating as who you are spiritually, how could you possibly contact your gods or your angels or your ancestors or the higher realm, so on and so forth, depending on what name you want to call it? So it's that frequency that's so important, played a role in us being here in the first place. The word was made flesh, and also plays a role in us contacting that which created us, for lack of a better term. So it's an important science. I always like to emphasize it, because I just feel a lot in the modern world, in certain aspects, the idea of prayer, the idea of chanting, or the idea of contact with a god has become
mystical, spooky.
It's mystical, spooky. Like there's no science to it. Like there's no overstanding from the people who are doing it. Like if you just sit down and put your hands together and say some words, the omnipresent being's going to come and help you. Oh, where's he at? So it's important to understand. Well, no, it's a science to this. Your fate, what you're going through, is in your hands. If you understand the sciences, you can make not only the physical adjustments to solve your problems, for lack of a better word, but also the spiritual adjustments.
Indeed.
And every set of people has their own frequency, has their own original language and their own original culture, and their own original beings on the spiritual side of existence that are responsible for them. So
again, that's a scientific fact. We always say it was misinformation, so to speak. That phrase we learned growing up. Even though we're all different on the outside, we're all the same on the inside. It was misinformation. It was just an outright lie, and there's no shame in that. We're all different. That's just what it is. There's no shame in that. But your physical manifestation is your physical being is a manifestation of what you are on the inside, if that makes sense. So on the inside, not only we're talking about genes, blood, DNA being different between the different races of the human family. What we're talking about is actual frequencies, our actual beings, our actual essences being different, which is why we manifest physically different, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So it's
100%.
Yeah, it's a fact. It's a fact.
It's an actual fact, and an understanding and overstanding of this science. Differences don't mean you have to go and brutally attack any other group of people. They just mean it aids you in understanding who you are, who we are, and therefore how we should behave, or what's going to help us spiritually, what are the beings, who are the beings we should contact, so on and so forth. And it plays such an important role, because all of these different aspects of your behavior, whether it's your culture, your language, your tones, your name, so on and so forth, play a role in your vibration. Okay, so when you shift away from speaking your language, when you shift away from using your names, if you're called John or Jack, Bob, and the other Rudolph. No offense to any Rudolphs out there. It's fine. But what I'm saying is that they shifted us away from our names, from our language, from our culture. So important, because we get a lot of this talk. Well, okay, but how much do religions matter? Of course they matter. It's your culture, it's your way of life. All these things play a role in your vibration as a being, in your frequency as a being, and therefore play a role in who you can make contact with. Okay, and you can never get away from what you are or who you are as a being. So as an African being, if you're trying to contact gods which are not African in nature, for lack of a better term, then that it will never work for you. It will never work for you. And this applies for everyone else also, which is why everyone has their own culture. If you're African, you have an African culture. If you are Hindu, of Hindu heritage, you have a Hindu culture, and so on and so forth. If you're European, you have your Christianity. If you're Arab, you have your Islam. Everybody has their different vibrations. So it's important to acknowledge that we can go through the different religions and point out various flaws, so on and so forth. But really and truly, the main thing and the main point is that you have to find the culture that's right for you and right for your being and right for your vibration.
Absolutely.
So,
Absolutely.
So yeah, it's been a good one.
Yeah, very, very intriguing.
It's been a good one. It's a good one. Yeah, like I said, we'll keep getting him on for now. For now. But no, it was very good episode. The Planes of Existence always blew my mind. First time I read Emotional Energy.
Yeah, Emotional Energy is wow. What a book. What a book. Yeah.
What a book. We didn't even speak about the science of nutation.
Yeah. which is
a crucial science when it comes to the planes. There's some student teachers out there shaking their heads like, what? You guys not going to mention nutation?
Yeah. Well,
so let's mention nutation real quick before we end it up. What is nutation and how does it apply to the planes?
Right. So the science that's been broken down to us is that every particle in the physical universe orbits about its own axis, the same way the Earth orbits about its own axis, an atom orbits about its own axis, a proton orbits about its own axis.
So it's like a spin on it.
Yeah, a spin. But it's a very small spin when it comes to, the smaller particles. And as the master was explaining, that's what determines its apparent diameter, but not its actual diameter, because what's going on is a very little tiny
so
orbit.
It's a slight move.
Yeah. So when you have a particle that spins, essentially, you have what's called nutation, or a nodding rate, rate at which the particle nods back and forth while it's spinning. So, best analogy I can give is play with a gyroscope. You see how it nods back and forth when you spin it. In essence, so every particle that spins about its own axis has a nutational rate, even the very Earth itself, if that makes sense. Now, what the master was breaking down is that every particle in the physical universe has a constant nutation rate. It's all the same. They all have the same nutation rate. And he was unlocking that is the science to transcending the different planes, because every plane of existence has its own nutational rate. So the way he was explaining basically was overstanding the moving between the different planes, the different realms of existence. The key to doing that is overstanding the science of nutation. So wow, again, mind-blowing stuff.
It's deep. So every particle is spinning on its own axis, and that spin has a slight wobble.
So it's a slight wobble,
and the rate of that wobble
is called nutation.
It's called nutation, and determines which plane you're on. So every plane has its own nutational
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
Which is deep.
Yeah.
Which is deep.
Amazing.
It's
amazing.
amazing science.
And there was just so much science in that actual fact. The master even went on to explain how empty an atom is. So all this seeming, solidarity, solidity, all this seemingly solid manifestation, it's nothing more than clusters of energy. We're made of atoms, but as it's been broken down to us, atoms are almost empty. Most of the atom is empty space. You have your electrons and your protons here and there, but most of your atoms is empty space. So, and we're clusters of these atoms, these energies. So again, it comes down to frequency, because we would say we appear solid, but what is solid? It's just a particular vibration that we associate solidity with, in that essence,
which is deep. Which is deep, because that means, again, it's just an idea of perception.
That idea of perception and proves that we are energy.
Exactly
energy.
Exactly that. And what we perceive as solid is just something that we perceive as solid. So we're hitting the wall, we can't walk through the wall. We're able to change our vibration, so to speak, to something that we would be able to walk through the wall.
Furthermore, think about when you dream and how solid everything, how real everything feels in that dream world. It's no different. It's no different.
Exactly that, which goes to say that once you cross over to the spiritual realm, even though if we deal with things such as spirits, the terms ghosts, but I don't want to throw them off too spooky again, even though these things are real. But you may have a situation where spirit can pass through a wall, or it's not an obstacle to it at all. But perhaps in that spiritual realm, there are objects, so to speak, at that same vibrational rate that spirit will perceive as solid, if that makes sense. So it's deep. It's all perception. It's all vibration.
As we know, two things can exist in the same space at the same time if they have different vibrational frequencies. That's a scientific fact.
Like light and sound.
Like light and sound.
In the same space. It's deep. It's deep. I'm glad we caught that mutation. Glad we got on that.
That was important.
It's important. It's important. But the science generally as well, it's important to understand that existence is vibration, really, and you have different vibrational rates, which therefore manifest as different states of existence, and that's really what it is.
Indeed.
That was a good one. I very much enjoyed that.
I did too.
I always.
It reminded me of being back in class every Saturday.
Class was good times, right?
Yeah, we had some good times with class.
Yeah, man. We had some classes that were packed as well, man. People squeezing it.
I don't know how we did it. We were running it every single Saturday,
every week,
teaching a new book, a new subject.
It was good times.
It was
times.
like,
random Q&As. People come in and asking the most random of questions. You couldn't control it.
Yeah,
it was good times.
Plus running classes 3 times a week on the side.
We were doing a lot. So it's good. That topic is always enjoyable.
Yeah, one of my favorites.
Yeah, planes of existence, the afterlife. There's still more to go into. So that was just really a start where we tried to talk about the planes and the surrounding information around that. But we still haven't. We can go into detail in terms of what you can expect when you transition from this realm to the next, what goes on in the spiritual realm, what happened, so on and so forth, the different possibilities once you pass from this realm, and so on and so forth. So there's so much to go into.
You should definitely cue that up.
Yeah, we'll definitely cue that up. So but hopefully we gave a little start, a little introduction to the topic, a little scientific background to the topic to appeal to all minds. We have some minds, I've noticed through this journey, you have some minds who just have an innate, almost intuitive understanding or overstanding that there is more than this physical realm, and they have that natural intuition and even their spiritual abilities. We've come across so many people with what you would term as spiritual abilities.
Extrasensory perceptions, ESP, or as the masters broke it down, those 4 higher senses which go above our physical senses.
Which, just to name them quickly, are your telepathy,
clairvoyance,
psychometry, and intuition.
There you go.
4 extra senses. And so I've noticed that you come across people who just have that natural understanding and overstanding for life beyond this physical realm, and then other people who want the scientific foundation. They want to know what's going on, how does it work? I need science.
And both are important.
Indeed. So it's important to kind of try to appeal to both of those groups of people, whereby if you want the science, if you want the breakdown, here it is, and then we can lead on to this is how we go about it. This is the natural spiritual practices or rituals that you would have had back in ancient times, so on and so forth, that people will innately have in them. So often even in class, we spoke about something and somebody would say, yeah, that makes sense. I always felt that. That's what that was, but I've just never had it explained to me like that, if that makes sense. So it's important to have both sides. But deep topic, very enjoyable, always gets me. So yeah, we're grateful.
Most definitely. Yeah. We're grateful for the knowledge that Baba has
We have to be.
given to us, essentially. Yeah.
We have to be. Yeah. We have to be. So yeah, I'm gonna draw it to a close right there. Subscribe. Was that too loud?
It's fine.
Subscribe. If you haven't subscribed, she said subscribe now. If you haven't subscribed, please subscribe. If you enjoy what you watched, please subscribe. Turn on your notification bell to be let known.
Leave a comment. It helps the channel grow. It helps us know you want more.
Yeah, you got to let us know. Leave your comments. Say what you're thinking. But we appreciate all the support thus far. And yeah, if you like what you heard, please subscribe. Check us out on all the podcast platforms, all the social media platforms. We're obviously on YouTube, Facebook. We're around. Instagram, we're definitely there. TikTok, we've just got going on that, and things are going nicely. Yeah. So yeah, jump on board. And we appreciate the support. Hope you enjoyed that episode. I certainly did. And
I did too.
Yeah, I'm glad to hear it. Until next time. So farewell.
Wadu.
Wadu.